Good company. Ripples on the lake. The water of Sermasuac ripples with life again. Spring magic infuses the entire territory, running in the streams and rivers, pooling in the lakes, glittering in the snow and ice that falls in the far north, even in summer. The enchantment has been almost constant for the last few years, and the land itself is beginning to show signs of it. The tundra is thick with animals. The scrubby grass gives way in places to young trees, and the lakes are crowded with silver-scaled fish and verdant waterweed. This life, this water, is in stark contrast with the death and the blood that stain the territory as spring becomes summer. Battle continues to rage across Sermasuac, with the alliance of Empire and Otkadov continuing to drive the Jotun out of the lands they have stolen. The spring equinox provided barely a breather to the Imperial armies here. The Bloodcloaks and the Green Shield, the Drakes and the Summer Storm continue to press the Jotun in Suac Fount. The Orcs are in retreat, but they clearly have no intention of making the liberation of Sermasuac easy for the Empire. In the days immediately following the equinox, two of the Thule armies, the Chasm of Thunder and Banner of the Rhymehound, suddenly withdraw toward the Silver Peaks. There is momentary consternation from the Imperials until two new armies arrive. The White Mountain Fire and the Shard of Winter join the warlocks and battle magicians of the Jaws of Winter's Lightning, fighting the Orcs of Narkist and Calcia. These armies are subtly different to those they replace. There are notably more Orcs in lighter armour. Scouts, hunters and skirmishers replace the more heavily armoured warriors of the Chasm of Thunder and the Beastmasters of the Rhymehound. These troops are further reinforced by the garrison of the Citadel of Silver and Bone, the Grand Thule fortification in the Silver Peaks. Originally drawn from the Summer Realm by the Thule warlocks, anchored with Ilium, it has since been enhanced and expanded with white granite and mithril. The warriors who join the Thule armies from the Citadel bear silver steel armour and blood-gold weapons, and each is touched in some fashion by the magic of summer. The blessings of the Queen of the Ice and Darkness. The magic of these Orc warriors is notable but hardly unique. Each Alliance army, human and Orc alike, bears a powerful enchantment. The Green Shield remain empowered with autumn magic that helps them share their understanding of the northern tundra with warbands from across the Empire, that binds soldiers of many different nations together in common cause. An entire additional army worth of independent warbands fight alongside the Green Shield in Sermasuac this season, each one contributing more than the sum of the parts, thanks to this powerful autumn enchantment. Every other army is inspired by the clarity and foresightedness of day magic. The soldiers of the three Imperial armies enjoy supernatural clarity, profoundly aware of their role in each engagement, wordlessly able to coordinate with those around them and with the soldiers of other armies. The three Thule armies possess the grace of Hinodir that grants each warrior a supernatural insight into the terrain in which they fight and a constant, subtle awareness of where both allies and enemies are located at all times. The Shadow of the Ice. The Jotun do not intend to give up the pride of Ika's tears. They gather their forces together in the shadow of the glacier, behind barricades and fortifications established in the wake of last year's raid. There are perhaps 35,000 Orcs here. Orcs and humans. The Yagara of Calcea, under the walrus banner of Isa Winterborn, continue to support their Jotun masters, and the warbands of the Howling Bear chomp at the bit for another opportunity to face the champions of Otkadov and the Summer Sun. There is no doubt that they are determined to keep their ill-gotten gains, the hard-bitten, experienced warriors of the Shield of the Mountain. There is also no doubt that the Alliance plans to disappoint them. Arrayed against the Jotun are nearly 50,000 Alliance warriors. Where previously their tactics have been reasonably cautious, this season is very different. The Alliance launches an overwhelming assault against the Jotun positions, seeking to sweep the outnumbered orcs away before a wave of steel and magic. The Green Shield are in the vanguard, always seeking out the strongest enemy troops and the most defended positions, prepared to stop at nothing to break the Jotun and drive them from the field. By contrast, the warlocks of the Jaws of Winter's Lightning seem almost to hang back to the rear of the Alliance forces, focusing on supporting and reinforcing the other armies as needed, rather than taking the fight directly to the Jotun. This is mostly a matter of perspective. They aren't being especially defensive, it is simply in comparison to the overwhelming assault by the other armies that they seem to be reticent to engage. There is one army that is being noticeably more reticent, however. The Shard of Winter do not seem especially interested in engaging the Jotun head-on. They scout the positions of the western orcs, push them where they can, but fall back in the face of concerted opposition, sometimes luring the orcs who pursue them into the blades of one of their allied armies. They give the strong impression that they are waiting for something. If there is a weakness in the Jotun strategy, it is that they must ensure that they are able to maintain an avenue of retreat, not only for themselves, but for the great number of thralls who work the Mithril mine. To the surprise of many Imperials, the mine is still operating even as the siege begins, the Jotun pulling the last few shipments of precious Mithril from deep beneath the glacier before what they must know will be their inevitable defeat. And inevitable it is. After a week of pushing back and forth, the Jotun line is struck by the combined might of the Summer Storm, Green Shield, and White Mountain Fire, and it begins to buckle. A great beacon suddenly blooms with crimson fire atop the great glacier, and the Jotun begin to fall back. Step by step they regroup and abandon the defences at the mine, pulling back towards Sada and the grave of the giants, retreating toward the Suak wastes. The tundra is churned to a morass of mud and blood as the Alliance finally takes the Mithril mine. Despite the power of the spring magic, visible sometimes at night as a shimmering radiance deep within the glacial ice, nearly 2,000 orcs and humans are killed or permanently maimed before the siege ends. The last Jotun defenders withdraw into the mine itself, drawing Wintermark heroes in to face them in the dark amid the galleries and tunnels that sparkle with ancient ice. They fight bravely, and they die. The orcs are not the only ones in the mines. There are several dozen Suak miners here. Taken as thralls by the Jotun, they barricaded themselves in the lower tunnels, refusing to leave with the orc conquerors. Those who can still fight take up their bows and spears in service of the Green Shield. Those who cannot are tended to by the Bloodcloaks. While the Jaws of Winter's Lightning secure the mine, the rest of the Alliance pursues the retreating Jotun, and it is at this moment that the Shard of Winter suddenly make their move. Throughout the campaign so far, they have been careful in how they engage. No more. They fall on the retreating Jotun with surgical precision, making the most of Hynodir's grace, supported by the garrison of the citadel of Silver and Bone. Their target, it seems, are the thralls, the miners and those who supported them, the thralls and the mithril they carry. The Jotun are taken by surprise, but rally quickly, fighting off the Thule forces, but not before they have secured several hundred orc slaves, and the mithril they were carrying. The Jotun try to get their thralls back, but the Shard of Winter falls back behind the Alliance advance. To get to their stolen mithril, their stolen thralls, the Jotun will need to fight the entire Imperial and Thule army, and in the face of that strength, they are forced to keep moving, keep retreating. The Howling Bears still attempt it, still try to flank the Alliance force and rescue their thralls, but they are pushed back with crushing casualties. The captured thralls and the mithril they bear are sent back east to the Silver Peaks. Many Winterfolk soldiers are outraged by this behaviour, but the warlocks of the Thule point out that they are permitted by the treaty to claim as many of the Jotun thralls as they can secure. As to the mithril, the Thule are not demanding that the Empire share their spoils of war. Why would they expect the Thule to do so? Beneath the Northern Lights. They are not the last slaves to be taken by the Thule. Each of the Thule armies does its best to secure orc thralls wherever possible. The Shard of Winter are simply the most effective at doing so. While they fight alongside their allies to secure territory, their first consideration is always to plunder the fallen Jotun, or the abandoned settlements, taking slaves and valuables with equal enthusiasm. The battle for Suak Wastes is very different to that at the Pride of Ika's Tears. A desolate tundra with few permanent winterfolk settlements, the Jotun are ill-equipped to slow the advance of the attackers. The day magic enchantments in particular give an advantage to the Imperials and Thule. The clarity with which they plan their strategy allows them to identify key locations to hit, and how to move their armies to ensure that they are defended against Jotun counterattacks. The Western Orcs are forced to retreat again and again. There is some consternation as 6 weeks before the summer solstice, the northern lights dance and twine in the night skies over Suak Wastes. They are visible throughout Suak, but seem especially bright over the wastes. Suak mystics consider this a very poor omen. Others scoff at their concerns. While the lights are most often seen, and at their brightest, during winter, it is not unknown for them to be visible in the summer months. The weather has been especially fine, and there is powerful spring magic in the air. They say it is nothing more. And yet the mystics are still nervous, and a few are perhaps surprised to learn that some of their opposite numbers among the Thule can share their concerns. The orcs of Otkadov are also familiar with the gold and green ribbons of light, and they too view them with dread. But obviously, there are more pressing matters than the lights in the sky. There is a war to be won. No single engagement defines the war over the Suak Wastes. Just a series of battles as the Jotun stop to try and stem the flood of the Alliance. Many of these fights take place around newly constructed Jotun villages, little communities of huts huddled together with a perfunctory palisade. Orc settlers, hunters, fishers, and farmers, thralls with a handful of Jotun protectors who would offer little resistance if not for the presence of the armies. Each one falls to the alliance. Sometimes they fall quickly, sometimes they fall after several days, but they all fall. Those thralls who are not able to retreat with the Jotun are taken as slaves by the Thule. The outcome is as inevitable as the fall of the pride of Icca's tears. The Jotun are driven from the wastes, and with that victory, Sermasuak is once again an imperial territory. Although, as some of the Winterfolk point out, if the Thule did not control the Silver Peaks, if the mountains were imperial, then Sermasuak would have become part of the empire once again with the liberation of Suak Fount. The Jotun are forced to fall back again to Tankipari and Stark. The Siege of Olgafsdottir's Hall. Igia Olgafsdottir is a champion of the Jotun. Eldest child of the Jarl of Tromska, she is widely considered one of the finest siege engineers of the Jotun, and a respected adviser of Irse Jansdottir, Queen of Kalsea. She built Olgafsdottir's Hall herself among the hot springs of Tanikipari, and she built the fortress of Kalant for the Jarl of Kirheim. Now her work will be put to the test. The alliance continues to pursue the retreating Jotun, but in Tanikipari the situation changes. Rather than makeshift barricades or wooden palisades, the Jotun have walls and towers and beacons and the garrisons that maintain them. The settlements in Tanikipari, both repurposed Winterfolk halls and new-built Jotun halls, are significantly easier to defend than scattered Suak campsites beneath the cruel serpents of the northern lights. The Imperial and Thule advance slows when it reaches Tanikipari. They are able to lay claim to outlying parts of the region, but once they begin to encounter the Jotun settlements, it is a different matter. Many of the warriors who garrison the defences here are summer-touched champions of Cathan Kanai. Indeed, it is believed that Igia Olgafsdottir herself is highly favoured by the Queen of Ice and Darkness. The stones of Tanikipari are garlanded with ice, despite the advancing heat of summer, in spite of the steam from the hot springs. The Jotun will not give up Tanikipari as easily as they did the Suak wastes. As the summer solstice draws near, it looks as if a siege is inevitable. Alliance forces make camp in the north and east of the region, regrouping after the campaign across the Suak wastes, carefully probing the defences of Olgafsdottir's Hall and the fortress of Kaland. Sermasuak is once again in imperial hands, but the war is not over. The Jotun are in highly defensible positions. Indeed, there are signs that they are actively engaged in expanding the defences of both castles when the imperial troops draw near. Furthermore, there are reports from the front lines that some kind of summer magic is being brought to bear on the two forts. There are sightings of ice giants, and some whispered rumours of even larger creatures, neither of which bode well for the coming season. For summer is coming, and in spite of the magic of spring, more than 4,000 orcs and humans have died in the campaign to drive the Jotun from Sermasuak. More than 4,000 lives ended, and between the Jotun, the summer storm, and the Thule armies, a significant proportion of those dead were orcs, condemned to one chance to cross the howling abyss. It is a sobering thought, perhaps. Yet even without knowing precisely what is going on with these fortifications, it will take significant force to drive the Jotun out of Sermasuak. Leaving them to hold Stark and the Taniki Parry is risky. With the Silver Peaks belonging to the Thule, it would only need a single region to be conquered by the Jotun, and the territory would be lost to the Empire again. Game information. The Empire has conquered Suak Fount and Suak Wastes and made significant headway into Taniki Parry. The presence of the 3 Thule armies and the massive garrison of the Citadel of Silver and Bone has been the deciding factor here. If the Imperial forces had engaged the Jotun alone, they would most likely have been defeated. Sermasuak is once again an Imperial territory. This does not, however, mean it is a part of Wintermark. As with any conquered or liberated territory, the Imperial Senate must use the power of assignment to determine which imperial nation Sermasuak will become part of. It is almost unthinkable that the Senate will not assign the territory to Wintermark, but they are under no legal requirement to do so. It could be assigned to any imperial nation. Likewise, the Empire has reclaimed the pride of Ika's Tears, and the Senate will need to use the power of allocation to decide whether the mithril mine will be imperial or national in nature. Before it was captured, custodianship of the pride of Ika's Tears was a national position determined by the military unit owners of Wintermark. Again, the Senate is under no obligation to leave the pride of Ika's Tears as national, belonging to whichever nation it assigns Sermasuak to, and could easily declare it an imperial position that will be auctioned to the highest bidder and raise money for the imperial treasury. Regardless of what happens, the seat would not be appointed until the summit after it was assigned at the very earliest, not least because there is currently no mithril in the mine, thanks to the Jotun. The alliance with the Thule continues and will last for 2 more seasons. The Thule have indicated that further discussion of strategy will take place via the ambassador to Otkadov, currently Evgeny Katsev. Likewise, any concerns that the Empire may have about the tactics of the Thule will also need to go via the ambassador. The Jotun castles in Taniki Parry and Stark are both rank 1 fortifications, but it is clear that they possess or are in the process of receiving some kind of enchantment. Fighting to conquer a region with a fortification can be especially challenging, even without the presence of large numbers of Jotun warriors. There are also signs that one or both of the fortifications are on the verge of being raised to rank 2, which will make driving the Jotun from Sermasuak even more challenging.